Hi, I'm Kim Gorham. I'm a volunteer with the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, and we're here to hear Chad Conine, who also was with us last year to promote his last book. His new book is called Texas Sports: Unforgettable Stories for Every Day of the Year. Chad's a local sports writer. He went to school at Midway, graduated from Texas Tech. He's a freelance sports journalist who has written for the Sports Exchange, Reuters, Golf.com, and several newspapers, including the Waco Tribune-Herald. He's been covering Texas high school and college football for 2 decades, and he's currently covering the Dallas Cowboys for the Sports Exchange. And his first book, The Republic of Football: Legends of the Texas High School Game, was published by the University of Texas Press in 2016, and he's now working on a history of college basketball in the state. But we're here to talk about unforgettable stories for every day of the year, and here's Chad.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim. So yeah, I'm here to talk about Texas sports, unforgettable stories for every day of the year. But I'm going to start by talking about the Republic of Football, because I'm basically just going to tell you kind of how Texas sports came about, how I researched it, and then some of the fun things that I encountered during the research. So in the spring of 2015, I was writing, I'd done most of the interviews and research for Republic of Football, and was in the process of having a weekly rhythm of writing the chapters that are in it, because each chapter was its own story, and it's a different story from a different town in Texas. 41 chapters, 41 different towns, and kind of their moment of glory. So I'm in the rhythm of writing that, and University of Texas Press was the publisher, and they emailed me one afternoon. In fact, I was driving to Granbury to go to birthday dinner. It was May 20th. It was my sister's birthday, so it's all easy to remember. And they said, hey, we have this idea of doing 365 days of Texas sports. And they wanted to know, if I was interested in that project, if I knew the best way to get it done, maybe with a group of writers, or, they just wanted to know my thoughts on it. And so I'm driving to, hour-and-a-half trip to Granbury, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about the amount that I got as an advance for the Republic of Football, and I was thinking about people like Kim, who was the sports editor at the Waco Trib, and he was a past sports editor, and maybe Bryce Cherry, who's the current sports editor, or different people that I might bring in, and maybe have a different guy do each month or something like that. And I thought about it, and I'm like, so if I have a different writer do every month, that's 12 writers. And if you split the amount that I got for the advance on Republic of Football, you're going to have to pay guys like $50. to do and yeah, nobody will do it, and I'll just spend all my time trying to collect, the different days or whatever. But I like the idea of the project, so I just said, okay, I'll just do it. I'll just write the whole thing. So I emailed him back, and the guy's name, the editor I was working with, is named Casey Cottrell, and I said, hey, I'm up for this, and so we talked about how I might do it, and he said, well, why don't you do a month of days? Give us a month of days, and we can take that forward, and then we'll just go from there, because it's an academic press, and it needs to be green lighted as far as what I'm writing about. And one of the things we talked about was having an equal representation, or a good representation of women's sports and Olympic sports along with football and whatever. I think we had a little bit of a. I think we probably, if the truth be told, we probably had disagreed on how much football should be in it. Because I thought, well, 365 days of sports, of Texas sports, that's got to be like 250 days of football and 115 days of other stuff, right? And that's not what, Casey didn't want 250 days of football and 115 days of everything else. And so we kind of talked, and we didn't really argue. We just had discussions about what should be in it and what shouldn't be in it. The 30 days that I gave him, I think there were some football games, like I think the Texas Tech game against Texas in 2008 when Graham Harrell threw a touchdown pass to Michael Crabtree at the end to win that game. I think I put that game in there, and I think he questioned, maybe whether that game should go in there or not. And I'm thinking that's like the #1 game in Texas Tech history. That if any game from Texas Tech is going in there, that one's going in there. So maybe there was a slight disconnect in terms of the priority of football. But as it turned out, as I was writing the book, I would keep a list of each day, what sport, and then I would kind of throughout, when I get to 100 days, I'd be like, well, how many women's sports days did I have out of the 100? Or, same thing, as you can imagine, as I went through the project. And I felt like I came out with a pretty good balance. So I wanted to read I wanted to read yesterday's date and tell you about it. Because as I'm researching this project, there are obvious things to put in there, like Cowboys Super Bowls. Baylor and Texas Tech women's national basketball championships and things like that. And then I would make lists with like Hakeem Olajuwon, Nolan Ryan, Cheryl Swoops, and do days on each of those people. But then there were things that came up that I never would have known about had I not researched this book. And one of them was the thing that happened on August 10th that I put in the book. And if you haven't seen it already, every calendar day is something that happened on that day in Texas sports history. Here's the layout, so you kind of get a feel for it that way. But so I would do today's, but yesterday's is more interesting too. Today's is pretty good. It's a track and field thing, which is a lot of August is track and field. But I really like yesterday's day, and I really like the story of how it came to be in the book. So August 10th, 1976. Emotions erupted into fisticuffs between the Dallas Cowboys starting quarterback Roger Staubach and backup Clint Longley after a training camp practice in Thousand Oaks, California. Staubach and Longley began jawing at each other during a drill after Longley criticized wide receiver Drew Pearson. Multiple accounts of the incident reported that the two quarterbacks then moved behind the baseball dugout where Longley landed a glancing punch to Staubach's head. Dallas assistant coach Dan Reeves said Staubach was on top of the scuffle when he separated the two players. The next day, both players downplayed the significance of the scrape. It's a new form of conditioning, Longley jokingly told reporters. We do it after running sprints and before lifting weights. We get so little contact, we decided to roll over and push each other. We probably could fight for hours and not hurt each other. Staubach dismissed the incident as well. No big deal, he said. It was just frustration of 5 weeks of training camp. Now, keep in mind, it's August 10th, and they'd already been in training camp for 5 weeks. My gosh. Anyway, Longley was entering his third NFL season as a rookie in 1974. He had led Dallas to a second-half comeback victory over the Washington Redskins on Thanksgiving Day at Texas Stadium. With less than a minute left in the fourth quarter, Longley hit Pearson for a 50-yard game-winning touchdown in the 24-23 triumph. But a few weeks after the training camp brawl, Dallas traded Longley to the San Diego Chargers. So you mess with Roger Staubach, and that's going to be it for you as a Cowboy. Now, that's not something that I just knew about. I was born in 1977, so it wouldn't have really been in my wheelhouse of incidents that I just happened to be thinking about. But writing a book like this, you end up having a lot of conversations about Texas sports and things that happened. And I was riding with my friend Cliff Smith to a Ranger game that spring, when I was doing so I mentioned that I took the project on in spring of 2015. Then in 2016, I basically wrote the entire book from January till the end of June. So Cliff and I were going to this Rangers game in May or June of 2016, and we were talking about possible topics, and we talked about a couple of pole vaulters and things like that, and he was like, hey, you should include the Roger Staubach brawl that we had with Clint Longley in training camp. And he just mentioned this thing, and I'm like, well, that's interesting. And it probably happened in August. In August, there's not a ton of stuff to write about, especially when you get past baseball and track. So I just went to the internet and Googled Roger Staubach and Clint Longley and got a little bit of a nugget, something to go on, maybe around the time that it would have happened. And I went to the library in Fort Worth, and I found accounts of the brawl in the Dallas Morning News and the Star Telegram microfilms. And so I wrote that day, and so that became a day in the book. That's, you know, it's not about a win or a loss or a championship or anything like that, but it's just something that a friend told me about that I wrote about. So that was one of the cooler days that I was able to put in there from that standpoint. A lot of the days, today is August 11th, which means a week ago is August 4th. Now, the first day I wrote for the entire book, when I sat down to write just the sample days that I was going to give them to get the project greenlighted, I thought, well, what's the first thing I want to write about? And the first thing that I wanted to write about, the first thing that I did write about was Nolan Ryan's epic moment when he was pitching against the Chicago White Sox and he threw inside it and hit Robin Ventura. Robin Ventura starts walking towards first base and then made the terrible decision to go charge the mound against Nolan Ryan. So he charges the mound and Nolan beats him up, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened. It was the first thing. It was the first thing that I thought of when I thought of writing about Texas sports, and that was the first day I wrote. That was August 4th, 1993, which means last Saturday. It was 25 years ago, 25th anniversary of that event. Now, the rest of the story for me, you know, this is kind of like the old Motel 6 guy. What's his name?
Paul Harvey.
Yeah, Tom. Yeah. Paul Harvey, right? Yeah. This is the rest of the story. Okay. That day is so vivid. That event is so vivid to me because I was going into my sophomore year of high school. Well, I played golf my freshman year, and going into my sophomore year, it just so happened that the qualifying for the golf team was on August 5th. Well, also me and my buddies had tickets to see Van Halen on August 5th. So I quit the golf team so I could go see Van Halen. And I just remember sitting there because we had lawn seats, and so we got there way early. And I remember sitting there for hours, and somebody brought up a newspaper, and we just reveled in the events of the night before because it had been the day after this Nolan Ryan Robin Ventura brawl. So that's the rest of the story. I quit the golf team to go see Van Halen. So that was the first day I wrote the Nolan Ryan Robin Ventura deal. I wrote a bunch of days on Nolan Ryan. There were certain topics, and I would say Nolan Ryan, the Spurs, Hakeem Olajuwon, both with the Houston Cougars and Houston Rockets, made great topics. So you can kind of track these things throughout the book. I feel like, a lady named Lynn Chapman did my indexes for Republic of Football and this book, and I just think the indexes are fantastic. I mean, there are pages and pages. Well, first of all, she did an index of sports, and so you could say, well, I wonder if there's anything about bull riding in the book. Well, yeah, there's bull riding on page 204, you know, or I wonder if there's any gymnastics. Yep, there's gymnastics on 144 and 153. And then there's pages and pages of, you know, just your regular index of proper names and all of that. But just, like I said, I would write down 3 names on a day, and I'd go to the microfilms over at the library on Bosque, and I'd you know, look up. I'd get the background info that I needed on those days, and I'd sit down and I'd write 3 or 4 days in a couple of hours. So that's kind of how the process worked. I don't know if y'all can tell this or not, but I was helping kind of promote and organize and get lunch for everybody at the event. So I never really took time to prepare anything to say. So I'm just kind of rambling at this point. And I want to stop rambling. In case, if anybody has questions, that would be great. If you just want me to go through and read what was on your birthday, that would be great too. So whatever y'all want to do. Yeah, go ahead.
What's your favorite story or favorite day? Yours personally.
Well, there's a lot of, and there's some of them. I mean, I always, as a sports writer, I always try to hide my bias towards Texas Tech. But deep down, I'm not very well, right? But let's see, did I put the Darvin Ham Day in there? One of my favorite things that ever happened, I was a senior in high school when Texas Tech was playing North Carolina in the second round of the NCAA tournament. And I was also, here it is, St. Patrick's Day actually. When I was a senior in high school, I was playing basketball one day, and I had my heart went into atrial fibrillation. And I had WPW, which is an electrical abnormality in your heart, and so I was going to Oklahoma City to have an ablation done that day on March 17th, 1996. I watched the basketball game, and then my mom and I drove to Oklahoma City, and I had this surgery or whatever. But so Texas Tech's playing North Carolina in basketball, right? So Texas Tech is probably going to lose to North Carolina in basketball. Well, a remarkable thing happened, okay? In the middle of that game, it kind of turned the tide of the game. And I'll just go ahead and read the day. Texas Tech forward Jason Sasser missed a hook shot in the lane, setting the stage for teammate Darwin Ham's career-defining play. When Sasser's shot bounced high off the back iron, Ham sprung into action, sprinting in from the free throw line and vaulting to grab the rebound and slam home a thundering dunk in one motion. Ham's slam tied the Red Raiders with North Carolina at 16, with 12:06 remaining in the first half of an NCAA tournament second round tilt. It also shattered the backboard and supplied Texas Tech with a phenomenal momentum boost. My teammates were already hyped up, and that play really just set the whole thing off, Ham said after the game. I was just feeling so good and ready to play that I wanted to run around the court and jump up and down and do some flips. Sasser was giving me chest bumps, and I just wanted to flex. Excuse me. The Red Raiders ran away with the contest in the aftermath of Ham's dunk. Texas Tech defeated the Tar Heels 92-73 at Richmond Coliseum in Richmond, Virginia. Sasser scored 27 points and Ham added 14 as Texas Tech improved to 30-1 on the season and advanced to play Georgetown in the Sweet 16. 4 days later, Allen Iverson's Hoyas ended the Red Raiders season with a 98-90 win, but Ham had given Red Raiders a shining moment for the ages. So that's probably my favorite day. Another good one, I was able to put, my sister played, both my sisters played softball at Midway Little League. And my middle sister, I'm the oldest, my middle sister was 11 when Midway broke through and won its first Little League World Series championship in 1992. So I put that day in the book, and that also allowed me to put my sister and dad's picture in the book. Stuck that in there. Any other questions? Any birthdays or anything like that?
Chad, I'm always curious about anytime anyone has to do a book or do any kind of project in which they need something that happens on every single day.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find, if you've done all this work and
Right.
you've got one day that stubbornly does not produce it.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
finding the winning piece of McDonald's
I know.
Monopoly game.
Right,
I mean,
right.
how can you find it?
It's
So
like
did
getting
you have
a
any
King
days-
Griffey rookie card in a pack of baseball.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
kind of, yeah.
So did you have any days that,
Well, there were probably days that I banged my head over a little bit, but I remember one of my friends asked me, what day do you think will be the hardest to do? And I said, well, the last one,
I was going to say
Like-
February 29th.
Right. You know what? On February 29th, whenever Akeem was at Houston, he just had a monster night against Baylor, I think in the heart of Texas Coliseum.
Yeah.
So that was my February 29th day. But as it turned out, the last day that I did was pretty good. I was pretty happy with how it turned out. And this was it. This is May 14th, 1994. Fairfield Jr. Nancy Perry added 3 gold medals to her amazing UIL track and field state meet collection as she won the Class 3A 100-meter and 200-meter dashes in the long jump. Perry clocked a state record time of 11.3 seconds in the 100, breaking her own mark of 11.4 set a year earlier, and won the 200 with a time of 23.5. She leapt 19 feet 5.5 inches to win the long jump, missing the state record by 1.5 inches. Perry returned to the state meet in 1995 and set the state record in the 200 at 23.49 and went home with gold medals also in the 100, along with her silver medal in the long jump and 4x100 meter relay. She finished her high school career with 16 medals, 10 of them gold at the state track meet. After a stellar track career at the University of Texas, Perry went on to claim Olympic bronze as a member of the United States 4x100 meter relay team at the Sydney Games in 2000. Now, for a lot of, like I said, you know, it would have been easy to do 250 days of football, or however many days of football. And then the publisher wanted, and it was, you know, important to me. It would have been important to me if they never said anything to include a certain amount of women's sports as well. So this is on the last day that I wrote. Not only did I get a women's, you know, another women's sport included, or women's, you know, yeah. But gosh, I mean, 16 state medals. I mean, it's like on the last day that I wrote, something hit me that I would have felt bad had I not included it.
Right.
You know, and so that was a really satisfying way to finish.
Well, I was about to ask, how could you leave that out?
I know, and you know what? It's not like, you know, it's not like that. You know, I scoured a lot of media guides, and anything that you could find that would clue you into days that things happen,
Right.
or remarkable things that happen.
Right.
But that's, I mean, there's no like, there's the state track meet record book, but it's not going to have specific days.
Right.
So this is just a matter of scouring the microfilms of the Waco Tribune Herald and trying to find something on that day.
Yeah.
And you'd go to a lot of weekend days. You'd be like, okay, so 1984, 88, 92, 96 were Saturdays for this particular day or something like that.
Right.
And so that's how I ended up running across this one. And when I saw it, I was like, that's it. Yep. So I called Kim as well for help on tennis stuff. I had a lot of different resources and people that I knew to call for different things. And Kim helped me out with, I think, Zuzana Zimanova, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I did a day on her. Ryan, did you have a question?
Are there any NASCAR stories in there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's something like 28 different sports represented. And that's, you know, that's including high school, college, and pro football as one sport, you know. But yeah, there's a NASCAR day, there's an IndyCar day. In fact, I think there's a couple of, there's a Formula One, an IndyCar, and a NASCAR day. Because the Austin racetrack, that's a Formula One track, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so, and then,
But is there any curling?
struck out on curling. It's close. There's one bobsled day. Bobsled, yeah. In fact, there are two. San Antonio has produced two Olympic medal-winning bobsledders.
Really?
Yeah, I can't name them.
Because it's a secret, or you just don't remember?
I don't remember. Yes, sir.
We just heard, I just heard about the Baylor A&M brawl. I think
Yeah.
the game, if I remember right, was October the 30th, 1926.
That's right.
What did you write on October the 30th?
I think that was the Harold Crabtree play. The one that I mentioned that the editor questioned whether it should be in there or not. It was going in there. Nope. Harold Crabtree play was November 1st. October 30th, 1948. SMU Mustang running backs Doak Walker and Kyle Rote combined for 3 touchdowns, and the Ponies defeated Texas 21-6 in Austin. Walker broke loose for a 67-yard touchdown on the 3rd play of the game, setting the tone for an SMU victory that helped it claim the Southwest Conference Championship. Walker added a 2-yard touchdown run to cap the Mustangs' second scoring drive. Rote caught a lateral and scampered 18 yards for the Ponies' final touchdown of the afternoon. Walker, who went on to win the Heisman Trophy for the 1948 season, also kicked 3 extra points for the Mustangs. Kyle Rote he's a guy that I wouldn't have known a lot about just from my own, you know, sports life of following different teams. But Kyle Rote was a really important, one of the maybe top 10 most important football players ever to come out of Texas. Is that exaggerated?
I don't think that's
Yeah.
out of line.
Yeah, but so Kyle Rote was great player at SMU and then a great player for the New York Giants, was on Pat Summerall and Frank Gifford's teams with the New York Giants.
And he predated Summerall as one of the top
Right.
football announcers.
Yeah. So the first time I really encountered Kyle Rote's name was through Hayden Fry, because I was writing about Hayden Fry's Odessa team that won the state championship in 1946, and Hayden Fry's Odessa team played Kyle Rote's San Antonio Jefferson, I think, team in the state championship game, and Odessa won. But that was, and it was a big deal to Hayden Fry that they played Kyle Rote's team in the state final. So that was kind of the first time that that name triggered with me, and so I've noticed it. You know how it is when you hear a name or you hear about somebody that was important, then you can't stop hearing about him. You know, it's like all the time. So that's what was on that day. Yes, sir.
If you're a SMU fan, Rote carried SMU on his back against Notre Dame.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep.
But he almost beat Notre Dame. They failed to beat. That's kind of what he's famous for.
Yeah, I feel like that day might be included. That might be included in the book as well. I can't remember for sure. I know there were a lot. There was, January 1st through 3rd are all Cotton Bowls. I think maybe even no. 1st through 4th are all Cotton Bowls, something like that. Because that was easy pickings at the start of the year. Well, because there have been a lot of really important Cotton Bowl games. Ryan,
February 25th.
is that your birthday?
No.
Okay. Oh, wait. February 25th, you're thinking that it's the Jerry Jones,
Yeah,
Jimmy Johnson divorce.
Did that make it? Was that what you put on there or
I
not?
think it was.
Okay. I was just wondering. I didn't know. If
Nope.
it wasn't in there, I'd like to know what beat it out.
Well, you're not going to like what beat it out. I could have sworn I put that in. It's that incident is in there in some form or fashion. Like a lot of things, like I mentioned writing about the Cotton Bowl. Well, one of the Cotton Bowls that I wrote about is when Johnny Football beat Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. Well, that particular day on the calendar coincides with, I hate to even say this because the one bad review I've gotten on this book was because I left this out, and I just told it anyway. That day on the calendar coincides with Vince Young's victory, Vince Young and Texas victory in the Rose Bowl over USC. But see, here's the thing. January 1 is Texas winning a national championship, right? Yeah, January 1 is Texas winning a national championship. January 2 is Joe Montana and Notre Dame beating Texas for the national championship. January 3 is the day that Phi Slamma Jamma was dubbed Phi Slamma Jamma by I can't remember the names. Thomas Bronk of the Houston Post. And then January 4th is the day in question, and that's A&M. And then January 5th is Texas winning a bowl game. In fact, January 5th is Texas winning the Fiesta Bowl. So, in the interest of not having the entire month of January Texas winning bowl games, I chose to put this Johnny Manziel win over Oklahoma because that was Johnny Manziel was a Heisman winner. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd have done it different if I did it over with. But the thing is, like the day you mentioned with the Jimmy Johnson, Jerry Jones divorce, that's in there somewhere.
No, I know.
Right.
February 25th was the Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys.
Okay. I follow you. All right. I'm glad you said that because February 26, 1989, Dallas Cowboys president Tex Schramm and the Cowboys' new owner Jerry Jones met Tom Landry at Hills of Lakeway near Austin, where he was playing golf. Schramm and Jones informed Landry, the only coach in the franchise's history, that he would no longer be the Cowboys' head coach. Jones bought the team from Bum Bright a day earlier on February 25th for $140 million and wasted no time in making wholesale changes. I'll go ahead and read the whole thing. There's only a couple more sentences. Jones hired his old Arkansas teammate Jimmy Johnson to replace Landry. Schramm lasted a month before he too was fired, and Jones seized control of the team's president's duties. Jones' action alienated many Cowboys fans who viewed Landry as a fixture of the team's identity. So there's that day. But as I was saying, I alluded to the Vince Young Rose Bowl win in a day that was, I think, Texas started that season with the win over Ohio State. And so I wrote about that day and alluded to what he would go on to do in the Rose Bowl that year. But for some Amazon reviewer, that wasn't good. So, anybody else? Anybody birthdays or anything like that?
October 18th.
October 18th? Is that your birthday? That's not your birthday, is it? It is?
Oh, you're not going to do it from memory? I'm sorry, Doug.
I almost did. I did one from memory a minute ago. No, I didn't. I thought it was. I just had Texas Tech on the brain. Mansfield native and New York Met rookie Noah Syndergaard struck out 9 and held the Chicago Cubs to 1 run in 5 2/3 innings to help the Mets win 4-1 and take a 2-0 lead in the National League Championship Series at Citi Field in New York. So that's a good example of one it's about a Texan.